And this is how you then follow it through. That's our job to do that. And then, of course, the rest who are watching, that's their job to do that as well. I like to think that what we're doing is we're reading between the lines. I think it's implied, and he would probably deny this, but I mean, you can't say what we're saying and keep an academic seat. You're going to lose it. You're not going to have your reputation if you're in a very well established academic establishment with serious reputation to consider, and then you're going to say something like this which is going to upset a lot of Muslims. You're going to lose your seat and you're going to lose your reputation. So he doesn't say anything, he doesn't say what we're saying, but all the sources are there for anybody who's got a brain to put it together. You just put it together and think of it and reflect, and it's reading between the lines. There is a historical person. He lived, at least his references beginning in the year 634, and he doesn't seem to have much to do with Islam. So all of these sources are basically talking about a leader of the Ishmaelites who comes from this area and comes to invade this area. And the names all have the same meaning. So, what happens? According to the first source we have is this Thomas the Presbyter, who talks about this invasion of this battle happening just outside of Gaza. And I should probably have a big map. Gaza is basically down here. So just outside of Gaza, there's around here, south of Jerusalem, there's this invasion going on, mentioned by Thomas the Presbyter in the year 634, which corresponds with Sebios saying, so Thomas the Presbyter and Sebios both agree that there was some kind of invasion from Tajikistan, the Tayaya from Tajikistan, to this area around the year 634. And they both say that Muhammad was the leader at that time. Then we have the Byzantine source of what happened when they got into Gaza, the martyrdom of 60 Gazas. Now, I'm saying he's clearly from a Jewish background. So we've also got the doctrine of Jacobi, remember, which talks about this. It's a book which is written for Jews, allegedly by Jews. It's actually the Byzantine, it's referred to as Byzantine propaganda to encourage Jews to convert to Christianity, but it's allegedly written for Jews by Jews, and it mentions this prophet among the Arabs. Okay, sorry, prophet among the Saracens. Now, for Jews by Jews, a prophet refers to what nation? Only the Jewish nation. It doesn't refer to a non-Jewish nation. There is no concept for us of a prophet who's going to come, who we should pay attention to from a nation other than the Jews. So when it talks about this prophet among the Saracens, it means a Jewish prophet among the Saracens. So we should understand the doctrine of Jacobi as a reference to a Jew amongst the Saracens, not as anything else. It's a Jew. That's common sense. This prophet among the Saracens could be a reference to Nehemiah and Hushiel 20 years beforehand. It could be just late information which is coming through. Or it could be a reference to this Mahmed person that Sebeos writes about and Thomas the Presbyter writes about coming into the Holy Land with a sword. And the conclusion of the doctrine of Jacobi is that a prophet doesn't come with the sword. So they reject this person as obviously just, okay, he's Jewish, but he's not a prophet because prophets don't come with a sword. And that would also be emphasized if the guy was a Sadducee, because Jews wouldn't be interested in a Sadducee prophet or anybody who claimed to be a prophet if they were from a Sadducee background. But then also we've got this martyrdom of 60 Gazas, 60 martyrs in Gaza. And when he comes into Gaza, he forces these 60 Byzantine soldiers to renounce Christ or die. They don't renounce Christ, so he beheads them all. He cuts off their heads. So this is interesting. Why would somebody, what kind of people would be concerned about people who are believing in the wrong Christ? Khosrau's people invaded. Okay, the Jews were led by Nehemiah and Hushiel, and they were killing a lot of Christians at that time. But they were conquering to take over their land again. But who is it that's going to be trying to say, hey, you have to renounce your belief in Christ. We don't want you to believe in a Messiah. Christ means Messiah. No, renounce a belief in Messiah. They want you to say, no, Jesus is not the Messiah. So what kind of people are these who are saying Jesus is not Messiah? Is that Muslims? No. Muslims say that Jesus is the Messiah. So they're not going to be Muslims who are coming and saying renounce the Messiah. Are they Christians? No, they're not Christians who are telling you to renounce the Messiah. Do pagans care? They don't care. You can have any religion you like as long as you just pay your taxes and accept the king. Khosrow is like that. They prefer to call themselves the chief god or something like that. And that they don't care what your religion is as long as you recognize them as the greatest god. That's okay. So who is it that's concerned about Messiah? Obviously some kind of Jewish sect. That's in keeping with what Sebios was saying. He's a Sadducee Ishmaelite. He doesn't want people to believe in a Messiah. Probably because he thinks he's the Messiah. So that's why he's telling them to renounce their belief in a Jewish Messiah. Then the next thing we hear is Sophronius telling us that that they've reached Bethlehem, and then we hear that Sophronius is handing over Jerusalem to them, that they've conquered Jerusalem. And we have these interesting stories from the Abbasid sources, which I think we can take because they're echoes of this historical reality which is happening on the ground down here. They've come across from the east, they've come to Gaza, they've gone to Jerusalem. There's something real happening here in the time of Omar. So this conquest is described accurately in the time of Omar. And we have some interesting stories. Yes, Sophronius did surrender Jerusalem. He was the patriarch of Jerusalem. The Abbasid stories get that correct, so we can say this is an echo. This is an echo of something historical. And they say some interesting stories that Sophronius invited Omar to come and pray at the Holy Sepulchre. I'm going to show you a picture of the Holy Sepulchre now.
Joe, while you're doing that, we're just so we get the dates correct. When you're talking about when you're referring to the doctrine of Jacobi and Thomas the Presbyter, this is 634. And they're referring to that's 634. Now with Sophronius, when he gives over and actually gives up Jerusalem, we're now in 638.
No, he dies in 638. He gives it up in 636, 637. So, Sophronius died in 638. This is interesting thing about the Kaaba. Now, this is a poem by Sophronius. He says in his poem, "Let me walk thy pavements and go inside the Anastasis, where the King of all rose again. as a Muslim? No. I'm the great four, and then there's some words missing because it's an ancient text which is lost. It's a poem by Sophronius. For something like heavens. Through the divine sanctuary I will penetrate the divine tomb, and with deep reverence will venerate that worthy tomb surrounded by its conches and columns surmounted by golden lilies. I shall be overcome with joy, says Sophronius. And he's talking about this Kaaba here. You know what this is? This is the sepulchre in the tomb.
Church of the Sepulchre in Jerusalem, isn't that?
Yes, it is. That's right. So this was originally a cube. It's been rebuilt several times, but it was a cube, and that's the Kaaba, which is being referred to by Sophronius. So interestingly, Sophronius invites Omar to pray here, but Omar declines, and he says no, lest his people, his armies consider it to be the Islamic sources say a Muslim place of prayer and masjid. So what we know is that this man is actually a Sadducee Jew, and he has declined to pray in here because Jews won't pray in a place like that. But he must have found it very shocking and surprising that, having gone around massacring Christians, as soon as he goes to Jerusalem, Sophronius hands it over to him and immediately invites him to pray. And that must have been quite a shocking, like, why aren't you my enemy sort of moment. It's like, what do you mean inviting me to pray? This is the year 636, 67. And instead, we hear in Islamic sources that Omar consults something called Kab al-Akhbar, who is a Jew, who together they decide that they're going to rebuild the temple on the Temple Mount, and they start clearing the Temple Mount. Kab al-Akhbar was with Nehemiah and Hushiel, according to the standard Islamic narrative. When Nehemiah and Hushiel's forces were in Jerusalem only 20 years beforehand, that they started to clear the Temple Mount. I should probably get a picture of the Temple Mount at this point. So he refuses to pray in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and instead they go to the Temple Mount. So according to the standard Islamic narrative, Omar consults with Kabul Akbar, who's a Jew, and together they decide that they're going to continue the work which was started under Nehemiah ben Hushiel to clear the Temple Mount and restore the temple. And so they set about doing that, and according to an independent source from Sophronius, which is actually recorded and kept in Georgian language, Sophronius says they build a masjid on the Temple Mount. They use the word masjid for that. This Sophronius' source calls it an accursed masjid on the Temple Mount. So that's what happens. Then Sophronius dies. Sophronius dies in the year 638. And in the year 638, something very strange happens. Omar, according to the standard Islamic narrative, or this Amr person, or this, what you want to call him, the Emir, let's call him the Emir. At least that's fine. Just so you know, Emir begins with an Aleph, Omar begins with an Ain, but they could be also, because there are a couple of sources referring to him as an Emir, that could be with foreign sources that might not distinguish between the Ain and the Aleph, so they could just call him an Emir when actually they're referring to Omar. So anyway, the Emir of the Ishmaelites appoints a patriarch in Jerusalem, not from the Byzantine sort of church, but from the Oriental Orthodox Church. He appoints for the first time an Oriental Orthodox patriarch in Jerusalem called Abraham the First of the Armenian Oriental Orthodox Church, monophysites. That's very curious, considering he was forcing people to renounce Christ not so long ago. Now he's actually allowing them to have their own leader in Jerusalem. Okay, he's not allowing the diophysites to have a leader, but he's allowing the monophysite Christians to have a leader. There's a distinction between the two types of Christians. One, diophysites represent Roman Christianity, and monophysites represent Oriental Christianity. So he's not going to have the Byzantines or Roman Christianity represented there, but he's softening his heart towards the Christians somehow, and he's allowing the monophysites to have a patriarch there. Next we hear there is a debate between him and somebody called John of the Cedar. he's instructing him on the story of Jesus Christ, and Omar is confused about the story of Jesus Christ. He doesn't understand this story. He doesn't believe it. Or the emir doesn't believe this story. Omar is familiar with these stories, and suddenly John of the Cedar is telling him different stories about Jesus, and he's saying, no, that's not true, that's not this, that's not the stories, I don't believe you. And so they're having this debate, and the Sadducee or the emir doesn't believe John of the Cedar. And then John of the Cedar says, look, we'll translate the Gospels. And he says, okay, you translate the Gospels, but don't refer to him as Messiah. I don't want to hear any reference to him as Messiah. And John of the Cedar eventually convinces him that he should have it translated as it is. They agree to have the first Arabic translation of the Gospels. This is around 640. So they agree to have the first Arabic translations of the Gospels. And this emir concedes. So you can see this progression of his character. He comes in, he's killing Christians, he's massacring, forcing them to renounce Christ. Then Sophronius invents to pray in the Holy Sepulchre, he kind of declines. Sophronius dies, and he allows the monophysites to have a patriarch. And now he's even allowing the translation of the Gospels into Arabic. You see how there's a curve in his life here. It's a real change in his attitude towards things. So they have the first translation, and the translation is carried out according to the Syriac sources, carried out by the Tayyaya de Mahmet. Okay, sorry, not Tayyaya de Mahmet. It's carried out by the Tayyaya. I'm sorry, he's Mahmet. So the Tayyaya are the ones that translate the Gospels into Arabic for him for the first time. What happens next? Coptic sources, the Coptic encyclopedias say that this man, Ömer, when he meets the Coptic leader of the Coptic Christians, who's called Benjamin of Alexandria, he's a monophysite Christian. He's not part of the Roman Church. He's a monophysite Christian. When he meets Benjamin, he says that he has never met a more holy man of God than doesn't matter. Both of these people are supposed to be Sahaba. They're supposed to be friends of the Prophet Muhammad. And yet here we have records of them saying that they never met a more impressive man of God than a Christian patriarch. So that's a big problem. But this is a massive change. This guy is supposed to be a Sadducee, an Ishmaelite, a scholar of the laws of Moses. He was killing Christians. And now he's saying that the most impressive man of God he's met is a Christian patriarch. So what's happened to him? Well, we have a story. It's from the Standard Islamic narrative, and this might explain what's happened to him. It says that when that Omar found he was originally not, he wasn't a believer in Islam, they say, and he found his sister reading these verses